The council chamber was quiet when Ambassador Ji Woo walked in. She was a tall woman with gray hair and tired eyes. She had served humanity for 30 years in this place, and every year felt longer than the last. The chamber was built for giants. The ceiling rose so high that clouds formed near the top. The seats were made for creatures 10 times her size. Humanity's chair was the smallest in the room, pushed to the corner where the light barely reached. Ji Woo took her seat and waited. Around her, the representatives of the galaxy's greatest civilizations talked among themselves. The Vradix delegates clicked their mandibles and made sounds like breaking glass. They were tall insect creatures with black shells and red eyes. Next to them sat the Kelthorans, beings made of living crystal who glowed with inner light. They had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years and believed they would rule it for 10,000 more. Nobody looked at Ji Woo. Nobody ever did. The High Counselor, an ancient Kelthoran named Zephrak, called the meeting to order. His voice rang through the chamber like a bell. "We have many matters to discuss today," he said. "But first, I believe the human representative wishes to speak." Ji Woo stood. Her legs felt weak, but her voice was steady. 3 weeks ago, she said, a Vradix raiding party attacked the human colony on Tyjan 7. They killed 347 people. Men, women, and children. They burned the settlement to the ground and took everything of value. She pressed a button, and images appeared in the air above her. Bodies in the street. Buildings on fire. A child's toy covered in ash. "I am here to demand justice." The chamber was silent for a moment. Then the Vradix ambassador, a creature called Lord Crix, made a sound that might have been laughter. "Justice?" he said. "For what?" "Those humans were on Vradix territory. They were invaders. We simply removed them." "Tyjan 7 has been a human colony for 40 years, Ji Woo said. "It is recognized by galactic law." "Galactic law changes," Lord Crix replied. "The Council voted last month to adjust the border. Tyjan 7 now belongs to us. Your people should have left when they were told." Ji Woo felt her hands shake. She gripped the edge of her podium to steady herself. "You gave them 12 hours to evacuate. 12 hours to pack up their entire lives and leave their homes. When they asked for more time, you killed them." Lord Crix clicked his mandibles. "They should have moved faster." The Kelthoran counselors nodded their crystal heads. The other species in the room said nothing. Ji Woo looked around at their faces, searching for sympathy, for outrage, for anything at all. She found nothing. "This is murder," she said. "This is a massacre of innocent people. Will no one speak against this?" High Counselor Zephrak raised one glowing hand. "Ambassador Ji Woo," he said, "the Council understands your distress, but we must be practical. The Vradix Imperium is one of the founding members of this Council. Humanity is ... not we cannot risk a diplomatic incident over a minor border dispute." "Minor?" Ji Woo's voice cracked. 347 people are dead. "And that is unfortunate," Zephrak said. "But humanity has many people. You will recover. Now let us move on to the next matter of business." Ji Woo stood frozen at her podium. 83 years. For 83 years, humanity had been part of this council. They had followed every rule. They had paid every tax. They had smiled and bowed and done everything they were told. And this was what they received in return: nothing, less than nothing. She thought about Commander Day 1, who was waiting for her message at the Outer Rim garrison. She thought about the families on Tyjan 7 who would never see justice. She thought about every insult, every slight, every moment of disrespect that humanity had endured since joining the galactic community, and then she thought about Protocol Prometheus. Ji Woo gathered her papers slowly. She did not speak again for the rest of the meeting. She sat in her small chair in the dark corner and listened to the council discuss trade routes and mining rights and 100 other things that did not matter. When the meeting ended, she walked out without saying goodbye. On her way to the communication center, she passed a group of young Vradix officers. They saw her and made that laughing sound again. "Look," one of them said. "The human is crying." Ji Woo was not crying. Her eyes were dry and cold, but she did not correct them. She simply walked past and continued on her way. The communication center was empty at this hour. Jiwoo locked the door behind her and sat down at the console. Her fingers moved across the controls with practiced ease. She opened a secure channel, one that the Council did not know about. One that humanity had built in secret years ago. Commander Day One's face appeared on the screen. He was a hard man with a scarred face and gray hair cut short. He had served in the human fleet for 25 years, and he had seen many things. But when Jiwoo told him about the Council's decision, something changed in his eyes. The patience that had always been there, the calm acceptance, disappeared. In its place was something else, something that had been waiting for a very long time. "I understand," Day One said quietly. "Protocol Prometheus is active," Jiwoo told him. "Return to Sol System. Tell the Admiral that we are done waiting." Day One nodded once. "And you, Ambassador?" Jiwoo looked at the screen for a long moment. "I will stay here a little longer," she said. "There are things I need to do. People I need to talk to. When the time comes, I want to see their faces. Be careful." "I will." Wu paused. "Day One?" "Make them remember Taijin 7. The commander's expression did not change, but his voice was like iron. "They will never forget it." The screen went dark. Jiwoo sat alone in the communication center, surrounded by silence. Outside the window, she could see the lights of the Council City. Millions of beings going about their lives, confident in their power, certain of their place in the universe. They had no idea what was coming. For 83 years, humanity had smiled and obeyed. They had let the galaxy believe they were weak. They had let them believe they were stupid. They had let them believe they were afraid. The galaxy was about to learn the truth. Humans were none of those things. They were patient. They were clever. And they were very, very angry. The war had not yet begun, but in that moment, sitting alone in the dark, Jiwoo knew that it was already over. The Council had made their choice. Now humanity would make theirs, and the galaxy would finally understand its mistake. Commander Day One had seen many things in his years of service. He had fought pirates in the asteroid belts. He had faced down alien warships with nothing but a damaged cruiser and a skeleton crew. He had buried friends and watched colonies burn. But nothing had prepared him for what he saw when his ship dropped out of hyperspace above Earth. The fleet filled the sky. 4,000 warships hung in perfect formation around humanity's homeworld. Battleships the size of small moons. Carriers that could hold 1,000 fighters each. Destroyers with weapons that glowed like angry stars. Day One had served in the human navy his entire adult life, and he had never seen more than 50 ships in one place. Now there were 4,000, and they had appeared from nowhere. "Sir?" His navigator, a young woman named Sumin, was staring at the view screen with wide eyes. "Where did these come from?" Day One did not answer. He was asking himself the same question. His ship was directed to dock at the Central Command Station, a massive structure that orbited Earth like a second moon. Day One had been to this station many times before. It had always been a quiet place, mostly empty, with a small staff and a few outdated ships. Now it was transformed. Thousands of personnel moved through the corridors. Screens displayed tactical data and fleet movements. The air hummed with energy and purpose. Admiral Taeyong was waiting for him in the main briefing room. The admiral was an old man, but his eyes were sharp and his back was straight. He had led the human defense forces for 15 years, always with a calm smile and a patient voice. The galaxy thought he was a peaceful man, a diplomat in uniform who preferred talking to fighting. They were wrong. "Day One," the admiral said. "Welcome home, Admiral." Day One looked around the room. There were others here, officers he recognized, scientists in white coats, intelligence agents in dark suits. "I think I need an explanation." Taeyong smiled. "Yes, I imagine you do. Please sit down. We have much to discuss." For the next 3 hours, Day One learned the truth about humanity. It had begun 83 years ago, on the day humanity first made contact with the galactic community. The council had welcomed them with open arms and warm words. They had offered humanity a place at the table, a voice in galactic affairs, a chance to join the great civilizations of the stars. And humanity had accepted, smiling and grateful. But even then, even on that first day, the leaders of Earth had seen the truth. They had seen how the council treated the younger species. They had seen the taxes and the restrictions and the subtle insults. They had seen the way the elder races looked at them like they were children at best, insects at worst. And they had made a decision. They would play the game. They would smile and obey and let the galaxy underestimate them. And while the council watched their small, harmless fleet and their modest colonies, humanity would build something else. Something hidden. Something powerful. Dr. Yuna, the chief scientist of something called the Obsidian Project, explained the technology. The quantum communication network that allowed instant contact across any distance, while the council still relied on slow wormhole relays. The AI tactical systems that could coordinate thousands of ships as if they were one. While the council had banned such technology centuries ago, the stealth fields that could hide an entire fleet in plain sight. The weapons that could crack planets. Director Sungho, the head of human intelligence, explained the rest. The secret colonies beyond council space, hidden in nebulae and asteroid fields and the empty void between stars. The population that was 3 times what the council believed. The factories and shipyards that had been building this fleet for decades. The agents embedded in every council world, mapping defenses, copying plans, learning secrets. For 83 years, humanity had been preparing for war. But why? Day One asked. Why go to all this trouble? Why pretend for so long? Admiral Taeyang leaned forward. Because we needed them to believe we were weak. We needed them to ignore us, to dismiss us, to think we were not worth their attention. Every smile, every bow, every moment of obedience was part of the plan. We were not submitting to them, Day One. We were studying them, learning them. And when the time came, we would be ready. And the time has come? Yes, the Admiral's face was hard. Taijin 7 was the final insult. 347 of our people murdered, and the council laughed. They have pushed us and pushed us, believing we would never push back. Now they will learn the truth. Day One thought about everything he had heard. 83 years of planning. Millions of people working in secret. A fleet built in the shadows. It was almost too much to believe. But the ships outside the window were real. The weapons were real. The anger was real. What happens now? He asked. Now we show them who we really are. Admiral Taeyang stood and walked to the window. The fleet spread out below them, thousands of ships waiting for orders. Ambassador Jiwoo will address the council one more time. She will give them a chance to make things right. They will refuse, of course. They always do. And then she will declare war, just on the Vredix? For now. But the council will respond. They will unite against us, just as they always do when someone challenges their power. They think their combined fleet will crush us. They think we have maybe 5,000 ships. The Admiral smiled, but there was no warmth in it. They don't know about the second fleet, or the third, or the ships we have hidden in dark space, waiting. Day One stood beside his commander and looked out at the fleet. They're going to be surprised. Yes, they are. Taeyang put a hand on his shoulder. I need good officers for what comes next. Officers who understand what we are fighting for. Will you stand with us? Day One thought about Taijin 7. He thought about the council's laughter. He thought about 83 years of insults and injustice. And he thought about his children, and their children, and all the generations that would come after. They deserved better than what the galaxy had given them. Yes, sir, he said. I will. The next day, Ambassador Jiwoo appeared before the Galactic Council for the last time. She stood at her small podium in the dark corner and spoke clearly and calmly. She gave them one final chance to deliver justice for Taijin 7, to punish those responsible. To treat humanity as equals, the council refused. Jiwoo nodded, as if she had expected nothing else. Then she removed her diplomatic badge and set it on the podium. The United Human Nations hereby withdraw from all treaties, all agreements, and all diplomatic relations with the Galactic Council, she said. We declare war on the Vredix Imperium for their crimes against humanity. And to any who stand with them, we offer this warning: do not. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Threats were shouted. Warnings were given. The Vredix ambassador screamed that humanity would be destroyed. Ju Wu simply smiled. We are counting on you to try, she said. Then she turned and walked out. Behind her, the galaxy began to burn. The Vredix defense grid around their homeworld was supposed to be unbreakable. 200 orbital platforms, each armed with enough firepower to destroy a moon. 1,000 patrol ships flying constant routes through the system. Sensor networks that could detect a single fighter from 3 light years away. The Vredix had spent centuries building this fortress. They believed nothing could get through. They were wrong. Captain Biora stood on the bridge of her ship, the Silent Fang, and watched the Vredix homeworld grow larger on her viewscreen. Her ship was invisible. The stealth field wrapped around it like a cloak, bending light and absorbing sensor waves. She had flown past 6 patrol ships and 2 defense platforms, close enough to see the individual windows on their hulls. None of them had seen her. All ships report ready, her communications officer said quietly. Boara nodded. There were 20 ships in her squadron, all of them hidden, all of them in position. They had slipped through the defense grid like ghosts. Now they waited in the darkness, watching the Vredix fleet gather above their world. The Vredix knew that humans were coming. Their scouts had seen the main fleet approaching, a force of 2,000 ships led by Admiral Taeyong himself. The Vredix had responded by pulling back all their forces to defend their home. It was the logical thing to do. It was what any species would do. It was exactly what humanity wanted. The main fleet appeared at the edge of the system, dropping out of hyperspace in perfect formation. The Vredix fleet moved to meet them. 6,000 ships against 2,000. The odds seemed overwhelming. The Vredix commanders were confident. They sent messages to each other, already celebrating their victory. Then the battle began, and everything changed. The human ships did not charge forward like the Vredix expected. Instead, they spread out into a wide formation and released their drones. 200,000 small craft poured from the carriers, each one controlled by the AI tactical network that the Council had banned. The drones moved as one, a swarm of metal and fire that swept toward the Vredix fleet. The Vredix had powerful weapons. Their ships were larger and more heavily armed. But they had never fought an enemy like this. Their targeting systems could not track the small, fast drones. Their commanders could not coordinate fast enough. Their ships started taking hits, dozens at a time, from every direction. Captain Haijin watched the battle from the command ship, tracking the data as it flowed across her screens. She was the chief intelligence officer, and she knew the Vredix better than they knew themselves. She knew their tactics, their weaknesses, their patterns. Every time a Vredix commander made a decision, she had already predicted it. Every time they tried to adapt, the human fleet was one step ahead. They're trying to concentrate their fire on the carriers, she reported to the admiral. Standard formation, just like we expected? Taeyong nodded. Pull the carriers back. Let the drones keep them busy. Signal Captain Biora, it's time. Behind the Vredix fleet, 20 invisible ships came to life. Biora's squadron struck the orbital platforms from behind. They hit the command centers first, blinding the defense grid. Then they targeted the power systems, the communication relays, the ammunition stores. The platforms began to explode, one after another. Like a string of fireworks across the sky, the Vredix fleet turned in confusion. Half their defense grid was gone. Enemies were behind them and in front of them. Their formations broke apart as ships tried to respond to multiple threats at once. That was when Colonel Jae-sung began his attack. 30 transport ships dropped from hyperspace above Vredix colony worlds across the system. They were not there to conquer. They were there to rescue. Human ground forces landed on the planets and began evacuating prisoners. human colonists who had been taken over the years and used as slave labor. They also freed members of other species, smaller races that the Vredics had conquered and forgotten. "We're not here to fight you," Jesung broadcast to the Vredics' forces on the ground. "We're here to take our people back. Get in our way, and we will go through you. Stand aside, and you will live." Most of the Vredic soldiers stood aside. They had never seen an enemy like this. Humans who came not to destroy, but to rescue. It confused them. It frightened them. Back in space, the battle was ending. The Vredics' fleet had lost half its ships. The survivors were retreating to their homeworld, trying to regroup. But there was nothing left to regroup around. The defense grid was gone. Their command structure was shattered. Their admiral was dead. Human losses were less than 100 ships. Counselor Vexthara of the Keltheran Dominion watched the battle reports come in from his private chambers. He was an old being, one of the eldest on the council, and he had seen many wars. He had never seen anything like this. The Vredics had outnumbered the humans 3-1. They had the defensive advantage. They had been confident of victory. And they had been crushed in 4 hours. Vexthara pulled up the old records. The files on humanity that the council had collected over 83 years. He read through them slowly, looking for something he had missed. The humans had always been so cooperative, so polite, so eager to please. Every time the council had taken something from them, they had simply smiled and accepted it. Every time they had been insulted, they had bowed their heads. And every time they had recorded what happened. Vexthara found the files. Thousands of them. Every broken treaty, every stolen colony, every unjust tax, every moment of disrespect. The humans had documented it all, carefully and completely. Going back to the very first day they joined the council, they were not keeping records, Vexthara realized. They were keeping score. He closed the files and sat in silence for a long time. The council was mobilizing a joint fleet, 15,000 ships from 40 species. They planned to crush the humans with overwhelming force. They were confident it would work. Vexthara was not so sure. He thought about the battle he had just witnessed. The coordination of the human ships, moving as one mind. The technology that no one had known they possessed. The strategy that had turned every Vredic's advantage into a weakness. And the rescues on the colony worlds, the humans freeing other species, showing the galaxy that they were not conquerors, that this was not a war of revenge. This was something else. Something planned over decades. Something designed to change everything. The council believed they were facing an angry enemy lashing out in pain. Vexthara understood the truth. They were facing an enemy that had been preparing for this moment for 83 years, and they had no idea how much they had already lost on the bridge of the command ship. Admiral Tae-young received the report of the council's response. 15,000 ships gathering at the Nexus, the great trade hub at the center of the galaxy. The largest fleet ever assembled. "They're putting everything in one place," Captain Haijin said. "All their ships, all their commanders, all their resources. If we defeat them there, it's over." "Yes," Tae-young agreed. "That is what we are counting on." He gave the order, and the human fleet began to move. Behind them, the Vredic's homeworld burned. Ahead of them, the galaxy waited. The war had only just begun. The Nexus was the heart of the galaxy. Every major trade route passed through it. Every species with any power kept ships there. The station at its center was the size of a small planet, home to 10 million beings from 1,000 worlds. Whoever controlled the Nexus controlled everything. The Council fleet filled the space around it like a wall of metal and fire. 15,000 ships from 40 species, the greatest military force ever assembled. Battleships and carriers and destroyers, weapons that could shatter moons, shields that could block the fire of a star. The commanders stood on their bridges and looked out at their fleet, and felt certain of victory. High Counselor Zefrak watched from his flagship, a crystal palace that floated among the warships like a jewel in an iron crown. He had ruled the council for 300 years. He had faced rebels and pirates and pretenders. He had always won. He would win again. The humans are approaching, his tactical officer reported. 8,000 ships. Zefrak nodded slowly. Less than we expected. They must have suffered more losses against the Vradics than we thought. Good, this will be easier than I hoped. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace on the far side of the system. 8,000 ships in perfect formation, small and fast and gray. They looked like children's toys next to the massive vessels of the Council fleet. The Council commanders began to laugh, just as they had laughed at Ambassador Jiwu in the Council chamber. Admiral Taeyang watched them from his bridge. He was calm. He had been calm his entire life, even when others panicked, even when the odds seemed impossible. That calmness was his greatest weapon. It let him see clearly when others were blinded by emotion. They are overconfident, he said. That is good. Admiral, Lieutenant Haywon said from her station, the Council fleet is moving to engage. Standard crescent formation? They're trying to surround us. Haywon was the youngest squadron leader in human history, a small woman with quick hands and quicker eyes. She had flown more combat missions than pilots twice her age. She knew how to read a battle the way other people read books. Let them come, the Admiral replied. Hold formation until they commit. The Council fleet swept forward, spreading out to encircle the smaller human force. Their commanders were experienced. Their tactics were proven. They had used this same formation to crush 100 enemies over 1,000 years. It always worked. The humans waited. They did not fire. They did not run. They simply floated in space, watching the Council ships surround them when the Council fleet was fully committed. When there was no way for them to change formation quickly, Admiral Taeyang gave the order. The carriers opened their bays. 300,000 drones poured out into space. More than anyone had ever seen, more than anyone had thought possible. They spread across the battlefield like a cloud of angry insects, so many that they blocked out the stars. The Council ships began to fire, but there were too many targets, too small, too fast. The drones slipped through the gaps and began their attack, but this time they did not aim for the warships. They aimed for the engines. The Council ships were powerful, but they were slow to turn and slow to stop. When their engines were damaged, they became floating targets. The drones crippled ship after ship, leaving them helpless while the human fleet moved around them. Lieutenant Haywon led her squadron into the chaos. Her fighters were faster than anything the Council had. They danced between the larger ships, targeting weapons and sensors and communication arrays. Wherever the Council tried to coordinate, her squadron was there to break the connection. They can't talk to each other, she reported. Their formation is falling apart? It was true. The Council fleet was designed to work together, with each ship supporting the others. But the communication relays were gone. The sensor networks were blinded. Each ship was fighting alone, making its own decisions, getting in its own way. The crescent formation collapsed into chaos. High Counselor Zefrak watched his fleet come apart. 2,000 ships were crippled in the first hour. Another 3,000 were damaged and retreating. His commanders were screaming for orders, but he had no orders to give. He had never seen an enemy fight like this. They were everywhere and nowhere. They struck and vanished. They turned every strength into a weakness. Fall back to the Nexus, he ordered. All ships, fall back to the station. The Council fleet retreated. They had come with 15,000 ships. They limped back with 8,000, and half of those were damaged. The humans did not pursue. They held their position and watched the Council run. Then Ambassador Jiwu appeared on every screen in the galaxy. Her face was calm, her voice steady. She had waited 83 years for this moment. People of the galaxy, she said, for generations you have been told that the Council protects you, that they keep the peace, that they act for the good of all. Today I will show you the truth. The images began to play. The massacre at Taijin 7, human colonists killed for the crime of asking for more time to evacuate. But that was only the beginning. Jiwu showed them more. Much more. She showed them the records that humanity had kept for 83 years. Every species the Council had destroyed before they could develop space travel. Every world they had taken, every people they had erased. The Council did not protect the galaxy. They controlled it. They kept the younger species down so they could never become rivals. The Vradics were not the worst of them. They were simply the most recent. We are not fighting for revenge, Jiwoo said. We are fighting for change. The Council has ruled this galaxy through fear and lies for 10,000 years. It is time for something new. It is time for all species to be equal. It is time for justice. The broadcast ended. The galaxy was silent. On the bridge of his crystal flagship, High Counselor Zefrak received reports from across his domain. 12 species had withdrawn from the joint fleet. 20 more were demanding answers about the records Jiwoo had shown. Riots had broken out on Council worlds. The Kelfaran Dominion itself was fractured, with half the great houses calling for peace with humanity. This cannot be happening, Zefrak said. We are the masters of this galaxy. We have ruled for 10,000 years. Perhaps that is the problem, said a voice behind him. Zefrak turned. Counselor Vexthara stood in the doorway, his ancient crystal form glowing with inner light. The humans are not trying to conquer us, Vexthara said. They are trying to replace us. And after today, half the galaxy thinks they should. Then we will destroy them. We will gather more ships. We will burn their worlds. And prove everything they said about us is true? Vexthara shook his head. You still do not understand, do you? We have already lost. Not the battle. Not the war. We have lost the story. The galaxy no longer believes in us. They believe in them. Zefrak stared at the old counselor. Then what do you suggest? I suggest we talk to them. Before we have nothing left to bargain with. The High Counselor turned back to the viewport. The human fleet hung in the distance, patient and waiting. 8,000 ships that had defeated 15,000. And somewhere beyond them, more fleets. More weapons. More plans. For the first time in 300 years, Zefrak felt something he had almost forgotten. Fear. Contact the humans, he said quietly. Tell them we wish to negotiate. In the human command ship, Admiral Taeyong received the message. He read it once, then handed it to Captain Haijin. Is it a trick? She asked. Perhaps, the Admiral replied. But it does not matter. They are ready to talk. That means they are ready to lose. He looked out at the Council fleet, broken and scattered around the Nexus. They had come to crush humanity. They had been crushed instead. And now they wanted to negotiate. Humanity had waited 83 years for this moment. They could wait a little longer. The negotiations took place on Earth's orbital station, a massive ring of metal and glass that circled humanity's homeworld. The Council delegates arrived on their finest ships, but they did not come with pride. They came with fear. High Counselor Zefrak led the delegation. He walked through the human station with his crystal guards around him, looking at everything. The corridors were clean and simple. The people who passed them nodded politely but did not bow. There were no grand displays of power, no monuments to human glory. Just efficiency and purpose. It made Zefrak uncomfortable. He was used to enemies who wanted to show their strength. The humans did not seem to care what he thought of them. Admiral Taeyong met him in the conference room. Ambassador Jiwoo was there as well, along with Director Sungho and a dozen other human leaders. They sat on one side of a long table. The Council sat on the other. Between them was a gulf of 83 years. You asked for negotiations, Admiral Taeyong said. We are here. Tell us what you want. Zefrak had prepared many speeches. He had planned to demand and threaten and bargain, to use every trick he had learned in 300 years of politics. But sitting here, looking into the calm eyes of the human admiral, none of those words came. Instead, he asked a question, What do you want? He said, You have defeated us. You could take anything. Our worlds, our resources, our power. What is it that you want? Admiral Taeyong did not answer immediately. He looked at the Council delegates, studying their faces. Some were angry. Some were afraid. Some, like Counselor Vexthara, seemed almost relieved. We want change, the Admiral said finally. "We want justice. And we want to make sure this never happens again." He placed a document on the table. It was not long, only a few pages. But those pages would reshape the galaxy. The Council of Apex Species would be dissolved. In its place, a new galactic assembly would be formed, with equal representation for all species, large and small, old and young. There would be no more first-class citizens and second-class citizens. No more elder races making decisions for everyone else. One species, one vote. There would be war crimes trials. The Vradix commanders who ordered the massacre at Tijan 7 would face justice. So would those who had committed similar crimes over the years, the exterminations and conquests that the Council had hidden from the galaxy. The truth would come out, and those responsible would answer for it. There would be freedom. The species that the Council had kept under their control would be free to choose their own governments, their own allies, their own futures. The old system of dominance and submission would end. Zefrak read the document slowly. When he finished, he looked up at the human admiral. "You do not want our territory? Our resources? Our technology? No, you do not want to rule us?" "No." The High Counselor sat back in his chair. For a moment he looked very old, very tired. "Then why did you fight? Why did you plan and prepare for 83 years? Why did you build fleets and weapons and wait in the shadows? If you did not want to conquer us, why did you go to war?" Ambassador Jiwoo answered. She had been silent until now, watching and listening. But this question was hers. "Because you gave us no choice," she said. "We tried to be part of your system. We followed your rules. We paid your taxes. We smiled and obeyed and hoped that someday you would treat us as equals. But you never did. Every time we asked for fairness, you laughed. Every time we asked for justice, you refused. And then you killed our people and told us they did not matter." She leaned forward. "We did not want this war, Counselor. We wanted peace. We wanted to be part of something greater than ourselves. But you would not let us. So we built something new, something better. And now we are offering it to you. Not as subjects, as partners." The room was silent. Zefrak looked at the document again. He thought about his 10,000 years of rule. He thought about his power and his pride and everything he would lose. Then he thought about the human fleet that waited outside, the technology they possessed, the secrets they had kept. If they had wanted to destroy the Council, they could have. They still could. But instead, they sat here, offering terms, offering mercy. Perhaps that was the most frightening thing of all. "We will need time to discuss this with our people," Zefrak said. "You have 3 days," Admiral Tae-young replied. "Then we will expect an answer." The Council delegation left. 3 days later, they returned and signed the document. They called it the Treaty of Seoul. The old order ended. The new one began. 5 years passed. The galaxy changed in ways that no one had expected. The Galactic Assembly met in a new station, built in neutral space with chambers designed for all species equally. Debates were loud and messy and sometimes went nowhere. It was slow and frustrating and imperfect, but it was fair. Every voice counted. Every vote mattered. The war crimes trials concluded. The Vradix commanders who ordered the Tijan 7 massacre were convicted and sentenced. Other criminals from other species faced their own justice. The records that humanity had kept for 83 years were open to the public. The truth was painful, but it was necessary. The species that had been controlled by the Council found their own ways. Some formed new alliances. Some built new governments. Some made mistakes and had to start over. But they were free to make those mistakes. Free to grow. Commander Day 1 retired. He went back to the colony world where he had grown up, a small planet at the edge of human space. He built a house on a hill overlooking the ocean and spent his days fishing and watching the sky. Sometimes young officers came to visit him to ask about the war and what it had been like. He told them the truth, the good and the bad, and everything between. He wanted them to understand. Captain Bo Ra became an advisor to the new assembly, helping them understand military matters. She still flew sometimes when she needed to clear her head. The stars were quieter now. She did not miss the war, but she missed the purpose. She was still looking for a new one. Lieutenant Haywan started a flight school. She trained the next generation of pilots, pushing them hard, demanding excellence. Her students complained about her, but they respected her. When they graduated, they were the best in the galaxy. Dr. Yuna's Obsidian project was repurposed for exploration. The same technology that had hidden humanity's fleets now powered ships that traveled to the edges of known space and beyond. There were discoveries to be made, wonders to find. The galaxy was bigger than any of them had imagined. Ambassador Jiwoo became the first Secretary General of the Galactic Assembly. She was old now, her hair white and her steps slow, but her mind was sharp and her voice was strong. She had spent 83 years preparing for war. She would spend the rest of her life building peace. On the 5th anniversary of the Treaty of Seoul, she stood in the assembly chamber and watched a young delegate give a speech. The delegate was from a species that had only recently developed space travel. In the old days, the council would have destroyed them. Now they had a voice. Now they mattered. Captain Bo Ra stood beside her. "Do you think it will last?" she asked. "This new system? This peace?" Jiwoo smiled. "I do not know," she admitted. "The galaxy is complicated. People are complicated. There will be problems and conflicts and failures. But we have given them something they did not have before. A chance, a real chance to be better. And if they waste it, then we will try again. That is what humans do. We try, and we fail, and we try again. We do not give up." The Ora looked out at the assembly, at the hundreds of species gathered together, arguing and debating and working toward something new. "They underestimated us," she said. "They thought we were weak because we smiled. They thought we were stupid because we obeyed." "Yes," Jiwoo agreed. "They did. Will they make that mistake again?" Jiwoo looked at the human fleet visible through the chamber windows, orbiting peacefully but always ready. The ships that had been built in secret, the weapons that had changed everything, the force that had broken the Council's power. They were still there. They would always be there. "No," she said. "They will never make that mistake again." Outside, Earth turned slowly in the light of its sun. Green and blue and beautiful, home to a species that the galaxy had dismissed as weak and irrelevant. A species that had smiled and obeyed and waited, a species that had shown the galaxy what patience really meant. The war was over. The peace had begun. And humanity stood at the center of it all, no longer ignored, no longer dismissed, finally understood, finally respected. Finally equal. The galaxy had learned its lesson. And humanity had taught it.